This thing is moving much faster. Okay, starting now. Namaste, viewers. Welcome to Jaipur Dialogue USA, Jaipur Dialogues, and welcome to the show today. Let me begin this show with the congratulations to the Indian team for winning the match against Pakistan. Last in the Hardik hit a six, and a much deserved victory, much needed victory was achieved. So congratulations, Team India, and for a glorious win. This was an important win. Today's topic is about, recently you must have seen that the four ladies in Plano, Texas, which Plano is a very respectable area where most of the well-to-do people live. And there you saw a video of a Mexican American berating, hitting four Indian women. To the credit of these four ladies, who later on appeared on a CBS interview, were conducted themselves very restrained, very dignified, and they handled the issue very well because they held their head high and respectably handled the situation. That Mexican American woman has been put in jail with a 10,000 bail, and rest of the legal process will go on. It has been termed as a hate crime, primarily because she threatened to blow their heads off of the Indian women now. Now, this brings us to the question. Of late, we have been witnessing that Indians and obviously NRIs, obviously mostly Hindus, are facing some kind of a hate crime and they are targets of attack. We know that Sikhs have also faced very brutal attacks on them. Their percentages are very high. Hindu percentage is relatively low, but at this point in time, we are a target, whether we like it or not. To discuss this matter in detail, we have greatest of pleasures in welcoming two physicians of Indian origin, Dr. Aseem Shukla ji and Dr. Bharat Barai. Both of them are professors and practicing physicians as well, and they have been very deeply involved in the matters that concerns us all. Aseem Shukla ji is one of the founders of Hindu American Foundation, and those of you who know the other name, Suhag Shukla, both of them are happily married couple, and they lead that entire effort to reestablishing the Hindu narrative in America through the Hindu American Foundation. Dr. Bharat Barai is a remarkably famous NRI in this part of the world. It's absolutely impossible for somebody to say they don't know him. And he has had a tremendous innings with the government in many policy issues. And I have greatest of pleasure in welcoming both of you. So Aseem, since you're alphabetically, you go A with A, I will go with you, start with you first. How do you see this thing morphing into a real problem for us here? Because it is creating a sense of frustration and a sense of dejection that despite being the most peace-loving, not a law and order problem community, we are being targeted and hunted. That's the feeling I get. And it is creating a lot of uncertainty in the minds of people. So the question is, why against us?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me, Vibhuti-ji, here on Jaipur Dialogues. It's a pleasure to be here also with Dr. Barai. The question you raise is a very urgent one because this is really an unprecedented time. Over the last just 2 weeks, we've seen in this compressed time frame over this summer, we've seen quite a few unusual attacks targeting our community. Number one, of course, it started with the Gandhi statue destruction in Queens, close to where you are, of course, here on the East Coast. Once there was first an initial attack and then followed up by another attack where they destroyed the remaining aspect of that statue so that it was completely destroyed, used a sledgehammer, even jumped on the torso, and then ran away during the night. And that investigation is ongoing as a hate crime. Targeting us has been reported to the FBI and will be accounted for as a hate crime. And then that was followed right after in Fremont, California, where Krishna Nair was, standing there at Taco Bell ordering, just like so many people do, a bean burrito and was suddenly targeted out of nowhere, spat upon with the most vile anti-Hindu and Hindu-phobic rhetoric that I think I've ever seen recorded. I mean, credit to him for standing strong with the camera, even as he was being spit on, even as his rather large man was, making all types of motions towards him and various threats. He stood his ground, recorded this for posterity, so that we have an actual record of what goes on. And then followed by, of course, the situation in Plano that you rightly mentioned. For me, I haven't seen a period in this, this many obvious accounts that have been recorded. We know that attacks happen rather routinely. It's not an unusual thing. You're right. By FBI numbers, it's lower than some of the other communities, but it's still a substantial number and increasing number of attacks that the Hindu community has continued to face in terms of hate attacks. But having them recorded really makes it palpable and really makes it something that we now have to deal with. We've been in this space for over 25 years at HAF. Having been born in this country, so now almost 53 years, I've never seen this. What is it that we are now being targeted? And we can discuss, we'll get into many of the different things, but I think let's set the stage of where we are. We have multiple attacks that have now been recorded. Some have been Hindu-phobic, some have been anti-Indian. But they all sort of circle around, and whether you say it's Hindu-phobic or anti-Indian, look at some of the language they use: cow piss drinker, curry ass, bitch, various other vile rhetoric that was used. You don't belong here. Why are you here? You dirty Indian. We heard that on both of those attacks. And we heard some references to Khalistan in two of those attacks that I've outlined: the Fremont attack and the temple destruction, the Gandhi statue destruction. So it's bringing in, the anti-India rhetoric that we've been seeing in our country, or anti-immigrant rhetoric, but it's also bringing in some Hindu-phobic rhetoric and bringing in some of the ongoing issues in India and putting them squarely in the United States and making us deal with them.
Thank you very much. It's a wonderful opening statement you made. Bharat ji, आपसे भी यही सवाल पूछूंगा मैं. And I want to have your perspective, because you are also very, very aware and very involved individual, and you have done a lot of work for the community. So tell us about this. Aseem ji referred to, the plethora of attack with language, our culture, our traditions, our murtis, our temples, and the very essential being. Is this some kind of a, attempt by anti-Hindu forces to hit us on the civilizational front? Why is it so?
I think, Vibhuti, as I see it, one aspect is a technical aspect. These attacks may have occurred in the past and may have been reported, but it was difficult to prove. Now with the smartphones, everybody has camera and everybody has the ability to record it. So in this Plano, Texas case, and in the Fremont case, they were able to record it with their own personal smartphones, which is very good one way, because it allows us to give a documentary proof. You don't have to his word versus my word. Here is recorded both audio and visual. So that is helpful. I think if I try to slice it, there are four kinds of groups that are potentially anti-Hindu and anti-Indian. One are the Khalistanis. Now this is kind of very disturbing in the sense there were more than 8 million Sikhs at time of 1947. I think something like 8.5 million. Most of them migrated to India. To accommodate them, the government gave all kinds of special treatment to them. Now there are only 8,000 or so Sikhs that are left in Pakistan out of 8.5 million. Most of the time, these people will be grateful that the country gave them so much of accommodation. Then from the greater Punjab state, to give majority to the Sikhs, they divided the Punjab into Punjab, Haryana, and Himachal Pradesh and carved out in such a way that the Sikhs would have about 60% population in the new Punjab state. Recently, when what has happened in Afghanistan, most of the Sikhs who were either bombed or scared, where did they come? They come to India. Nobody went to Pakistan. And yet, in spite of being grateful, and on the other side, opening their own eyes that it is the Islamic fundamentalists that have killed Sikhs, they've abducted young Sikh girls in Pakistan, raped them, forcibly converted them, and instead of trying to blame Pakistan and Islamic fundamentalism, some of these totally misguided, brainwashed people are trying to attack the country and the religion of the people who have been so gracious and who have been so accommodative. In fact, they forget that the first sentence of Guru Granth Sahib was Ram Naam Uradhar. And Guru Nanak had gone for Ram Darshan at the Ayodhya temple that was cited in the Supreme Court judgment trying to prove that Ram Mandir existed there because in, I think, year 1510 or so, Guru Nanak went there, and in Nanak Nama, he has made a reference to him having gone for Ram Darshan. So this is very disturbing, and some of the mischievous elements in Canada and some in Silicon Valley are trying to foster this kind of animosity. The second group are the Islamic extremists, especially driven by some of the extremist Pakistani element and some driven by Palestinian extremist element. Now, India has given support to the Palestinians for all these years. They are still supporting them, but they are not blindly supporting them. They are more balancing out between Palestine and Israel. The third group are the white supremacists. We knew that they were always against anybody who was not white, but that KKK is kind of number 3 coming up against the Indians. This particular woman in Plano, Texas, who claimed herself to be Mexican American, that is even more surprising because Mexicans themselves, either that woman or what was her name? Esmeralda?
Yeah,
Or
something like
her
that.
father or grandfather, somebody was an immigrant. So why, as an immigrant who themselves complain of discrimination, are trying to do the discrimination against another group of immigrants, the Indian Americans? So that is a new kind of thing that has come up where at least a Mexican American woman, and I hope that is an exception rather than rule, because I have not come across other Mexican Americans who are anti-Indian. So yes, it is disturbing, and I'm glad that Esmeralda was caught by Plano, Texas police, and I hope that the Justice Department also sues her for civil rights violation. Since the people in Texas have already taken the lead, I'm watching it, but otherwise we'll write to the Justice Department to prosecute her for violation of the civil rights of 4 Indian Americans. And it is, you don't need a proof. It's right there on the video camera.
Yeah, I mean, these things take time to prove. That is the bane of democracy, the benefit of democracy, rule of law. At the same time, as a famous quote goes, that the criminals and antisocial elements take advantage of the compassion of the rule of law and the compassion of the society, and more consideration is paid to the accused. It is, a word that is used, than the ones who suffered. Aseemji, this brings to a very interesting element. The hatred that is happening here is that when COVID happened, I remember seeing plethora of articles, blaming Modi, and they even called it the Indian variant, whereas they systematically avoided mention of China Wuhan virus element. But Indian variant, the word caught on. And just as is the race-related thing, when the Chinese virus was talked about as a Wuhan virus, we saw violence against the Chinese people here. and then it was stopped. But the Indian variant mention never stopped. In reality, India ends up doing better than most countries in handling the COVID part. But tell us something about the word Indian, because even the people, the natives of America, they were branded as Indians. So we are in a very interesting soup where
Mhm.
we have been targeted as an attack, as the aboriginals and everything else. But this particular thing has stuck
Mhm.
despite being the most accomplished professional group, doing well for the community, paying 6% of the taxes in this country, yet we are hounded. We are looked down upon. Is our success the cause of our becoming a target?
Yeah. This is a, a very important point, and I think to your broader question, it really, to me, raises a question of whether the type of anti-Indian rhetoric that we see at higher levels, say in the media, say in certain areas of academia, and it's not just anti-India, but also anti-Hindu rhetoric. And I don't mean to commonly conflate these two, because anti-India and anti-Hindu is not necessarily the same. However, in many places, it is often a substitute for each other. Oftentimes, that line is often very difficult to see. So when I refer to it, I'm referring it to more generally, but I totally understand that, for example, the attack in Texas, I don't consider that necessarily Hindu phobic,
Yes.
because the language used was very anti-India. But there are oftentimes areas where they connect and they merge and they come from the same well, oftentimes the anti-India and anti-Hindu rhetoric. So I just want to be clear on that. But there is no question that more than any other time that I recall, being someone who is supportive of a U.S. India relationship, that was always something that brought our community together. For all of the years that I've been in advocacy, all of the years that I've followed U.S. India relations, to be an Indian American, a proud Indian American, to stand for both the United States and India, the two largest democracies, or the oldest and the largest, working together, was always something that brought all aspects of our community together. It brought Indian Muslims, Indian Sikhs, Indian Christians, Hindus. We could all come together on the US India nuclear deal. You could come together on trade issues. You could come together on many things to champion that. It is only over the last 5 to 6 years that it's become sort of a calling card to say, oh, you're an extremist. You support US India relations, meaning you support Modi, meaning you are, the worst human being possible, or that you support fascism. And in reality, all that Indian Americans are doing is supporting the same U.S.-India relationship that Blinken is supporting, that Biden is supporting. This is U.S. policy, that India is a very important partner, especially when you're dealing with China, when you're dealing with all of the uncertainty in the world, that very reliable allies should be coming together. This is what Europe wants. This is what the UK wants. This is what the United States wants. So to be a champion of that relationship is to be in the mainstream. To actually be against that is to be against the mainstream and to be pursuing a radical agenda. So I think we need to lay that out there, that if you're against a positive, constructive US-India relationship, you are the radical. You are the extremist. You are the one who is against prevailing US policy. Now, because though there's this whole narrative, like the recent articles we've seen in the New York Times and the Washington Post, it has become acceptable to target Indians as dirty, Indians as extremists, Indians as intolerant. That picture has begun to stick because you are being told that if you like India, if you support India, that you must be loyal to India. So your loyalty is questioned. Dual loyalty comes up because you're proud of your ancestral homeland. That you want India to be secure, safe, prosperous because you have relatives there. Now you have dual loyalty. You are not fully American. You are really kind of more pro-India, while every other country, Cuban Americans, Argentinian Americans, Italian Americans, Greek Americans, they can all be proud of their country. or their other side of the hyphen. But if Indians dare do that, they're painted as somehow extremist, somehow fascist, or they must explain everything that Modi does, good or bad, suddenly becomes your burden or something that you have to either condemn or celebrate. When you're looking past all of that, you're saying there's certain inalienable things that this is what a US-India relationship should be. This is the security of India, of integrity of India. All of those things have been brought into question. And because they have, it has given license to some of these extremists who just know enough about this to suddenly unleash their, venomous emotions against an average Indian ordering a bean burrito at Taco Bell.
Thank you. I will piggyback on the same of the statements made by Dr. Shukla Bharatji, is that narrative part. You know, as he very poignantly pointed out, that everybody is welcome to be what they are and love their ancestral homes, but we do it, then we become a villain. This is the thing which I was talking about, the civilizational part of it. It has something to do with the Judaic, Abrahamic faith part of it, that science and technology has flattened the human dynamics at this point in time. And is the rise of Sanatan, or is the rise of our principles of universality, universal principles, that we as humans, we are all the same, impacting the fear factor, where the religion is based on fear and ignorance? People are knowing a lot more. Just imagine, just a few minutes ago, we were getting the scores live from India or the cricket match. So we are living in a world where there is a flattening of the playing field in more ways than one. Are we perceived as the Murti Puja, idol worshippers, as a threat to the Abrahamic faith, and that's how it is arising?
Vibhutuji, there is no question that there is a small minority. I would say most of the whites are still very decent human beings.
Yes.
But there is a small extremist minority, and same thing among the Muslims. Sikhs maybe a little more Khalistani because they are misguided on the West Coast and in Canada. But let's see why. Number one, as an ethnic group, we are most successful educationally and financially. They say that nobody tries to hate a beggar, they all pity a beggar. But if you are rich, successful, maybe you drive a Mercedes or a Tesla or a Lexus, or you are living in a large home, people want to be jealous of you. Many of them will admire you for success, but there will be some who will be jealous. Same thing is happening to the Jews, even though in color they are white and their first names are still same as the people, but still Jews are hated, haunted, and discriminated against by small minority of extremists. So we are also different in our names. We are also different in our appearance. We are also different in our lifestyle, in our food habits. So it gives people time and ability to try to discriminate because we are little different. But on the other hand, those who are well educated, most of them realize how valuable we are. And I don't know if any of the Silicon Valley companies will be able to run successfully if all people who are of Indian ethnicity are excluded. That's a reality. And many of the functions of the banks and other financial institutions may not be able to function if you take out Indian ethnicity in support either here or in India. So it's unfortunate, but we'll have to just live with that. Now, why does it not happen to the Irish Americans or Italian Americans or German Americans? Because their look is not different. They speak with the same accent, and our children also will speak with the same accent, but their look will still be somewhat different. So I hope that this small extremist minority will be reduced further and further and sidelined by most other people who are nice, decent, and tolerant.
Well, I join you in your hope, and we sincerely pray that extremism doesn't drive extreme behaviors, which is mostly it happens. In our management work, we sometimes say extremes drive the middle. And it is very important to curb the extremism through varieties of ways. So, Dr. Shukla, at Hindu American Foundation, you guys are doing a phenomenal work for as many years. So, I am also aware that you guys, Suhag and others, are coming to Long Island shortly, and I'll be there to meet with all of you. My point is very simple here. How do we change that invisible war that is going against us? Because there is a very important point here. We are the most peaceful, law abiding citizens in any immigrant community anywhere in the world.
Mhm.
Anywhere in the world. We are not a law and order problem anywhere. We don't kill people in the name of XYZ. Yet, we are branded as violent, fascist, Hindu supremacists, Hindutva. Every word of Hindus has a serious negative connotation. Whereas those who kill, they are people are bending backwards to accommodate them. How do we address that phenomenon as changing the Hindu narrative?
Yeah. Well, that Vibhutiji is the 23-year-old question, right? It's funny. Our oldest son is 24 years old, and HAF was first established 2003. So how much is that? 19 years ago, right? So something. And my younger son is 19 years old, almost as old as HAF, and he often asks, you've been doing this for 19 years, fighting the same fight. When do you ever win, or when does this ever end, right? And it can be a frustration that, wait, you've been here this long and you haven't solved this. Well, we made a lot of progress, and then geopolitical things change, and things happen, and other forces come upon the scene. In the end, the same battlefield, the same Kurukshetra is laid out, arrayed in front of us. And unfortunately, the adversaries change, but the philosophy, the ideology is the same. Now, why should we be so surprised? I mean, this has been going on since the foundation of the United States, the founding of India. Whatever is happening geopolitically is going to reflect in these types of things. This is a time of great polarization. So we are facing great polarization. What we have to do is that, discuss in fora like this, so we know who these players are. Okay, who is it that is arrayed against us, and what can we do as a community? And to me, the most important thing that we can do as a community is to build awareness, to know that, listen, if you or your children are at school and at university and they want to have a Hindu event, they are going to possibly face these types of this type of intolerance. It's the same thing that any community has had to learn over the years, that anti-Semitism will exist, and it has existed, and it continues to exist. Hindu phobia exists, and it will continue to exist in these types of ways, that they will come after your festivals, that they will call your puja fascist, or your Saraswati puja before exams, they'll call it a casteist experiment. They will do this, they will do that. Be aware of those types of things. So we have to educate our next generation. Our next generation is being much more cowed by a lot of this that's happening. Universities, we're seeing this over and over. They're walking away from their festivals. They're walking away from solidarity with other Hindu organizations because they're afraid of being labeled, fascist, for being labeled Hindutva, for being labeled extremists, Hindu extremists, or right-wing Hindus, just for having an assertive Hindu identity. So we have to begin with education. We have to begin with knowing and identifying, just as we've been doing, that these are the tactics they're using, and this is how you speak to that. So we have a whole language at HAF on how we deal with dual loyalty smears, how we deal with the Hindu phobic smears. We have an entire glossary. Anyone can go to the website. and look up the Hinduphobia glossary, because these are the terms, the vocabulary, know the language that's being used to insinuate certain things about you that you have never perceived about yourself. And then, being very being assertive and pushing back and not allowing those things. And so, here's the language of advocacy. Here's the language of activism, and we're trying to put all of those things together. We're going to see it. You're going to see big news from HAF on the caste front as the upcoming weeks go on. How we're dealing with all of that that's happening in Silicon Valley, that's happening here. So, all of these things tie together. We have to see it as it is, that these are all interconnected. And as long as we can see that and we can get the big picture out in front of our audience, and if people become more engaged, we're seeing changes. We can push back against this latest assault upon us. We've seen many like this. We have continued to move forward. You can see where our community is today. And we will continue to succeed. But it's going to take education, it's going to take awareness, and it's going to take advocacy, pushing forward, moving forward. There's a lot of events happening over the next few months where, just like Long Island, there's an event coming up in Washington, D.C. More of these events from many different Hindu organizations, Hindu American organizations working together. We're going to start turning the tide and pushing back. I'm very optimistic.
That's a very wonderful optimism that you talked about. Just one thing, that 19 years is not too long. Seems long, but it's not too long, because after all, United States, I have been hearing since 1991 when I came here, they're still searching for comprehensive immigration reform. So let's not be apologetic. One thing which I always tell most of my friends is, let's not be apologetic. Let's not be diffident. Let's not be defensive when we do not need to. And that's what is important. Bharatji, I'm coming to you. You have been very active in the community activities. And my inquiry with you is, how is it that both of you are professors, so you have seen the academic world close up. The lot of syllabus, lot of curriculum in the schools and colleges are so anti, so that, as Aseem ji said, that our children are more apologetic, we don't want to get involved. This wokeism somewhere along the line showed up even in these ladies who said that we are not part of Hindutva, we are Americans, let the due process take place. So they also refrained from identifying themselves as a proud Hindu, because they were targeted as Indians, but their identity is a Hindu identity. So the question here is that, how is it that our solemn 4 congressmen or 5 congressmen who are in the US House of Congress, and I'm contesting for New York State Assembly position, how come they do not do anything in this regard? I have not seen any statement made by our honorable congressman. And I say this without meaning anything bad, but it's an honest inquiry as a citizen of America, that how come you have nothing to say? It's happening right under your nose in California. Where are these people?
Well, I can speak for one, because last Sunday I was with him. He's from Chicago, and I know Radha Krishnamurthy. And I did give him my views very candidly, openly, and he agreed, because there was a hired guy called Peter Friedrich, who is a known Hindu baiter.
Right.
He goes one day to Schaumburg Assembly and says, I am a resident of Schaumburg, because he stayed overnight in hotel in Schaumburg. One day he goes Glen Island, and then says, oh, I am a resident here, because he stayed in the motel there overnight. So he went then to Aurora and tried to do the same pitch. And I had a good 45-minute, very strong, very robust shootout with him on this issue. Of course, I was not apologetic to him, very straightforward about Hindutva. So I think Raja understands our stand. The other one from Silicon Valley, who I know very well, Ro Khanna, he's coming here also on 24th of September to do a fundraiser in Chicago. And I have good relations with him. Many times I think Vibhuti pulling them on the side and giving your mind rather than trying to dress them down in public. So I'm going to try to do that. The third one, who is a doctor, but he's married to a non-Hindu woman, and he tries to put himself more as kind of neutral as far as religion is concerned, or a non-religious denominational person. And the fourth one I have given up, Pramila Jaipal. I had supported her during her first campaign. I had met her, but what I understand is that she has quite a few Somali in her constituency and left wing, and very few Hindu. So she is trying to project herself as if she has no connection to Hindu. So we really have only three or two and a half, if you want to say. When it comes to India, the third one is okay. He is strong pro-Indian, and I is actually co-chair of the House Caucus. Am I right?
Yeah. Asimji, Bharatji is asking you that question.
Who is co-chair of which caucus? The India caucus?
Yeah, in the House.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up, to be honest.
But anyway, he is also ranking member of the. No, he's actually chairman or co-chair of the House South Asia Committee, subcommittee. So anyway, we have been telling them, and now what I'm doing, Vibhuti, when people come here asking for support in name of being Indian, I very bluntly ask them in that same meeting, are you going to be pro-Hindu and pro-India? And if you are not, I don't want to write any more checks. You can go ahead and win on your own. I tell you, majority of them are trying out. I'm still willing to give them some money for trying out. But if they are going to be anti-Hindu or anti-India, well, they can try somewhere else. Why do they come from Texas to me here? What is my connection to a person in Texas? He wants me to write check because I'm an Indian American. Well, then I'm expecting something in return of being labeled Indian American. And I'm telling other colleagues also in Chicago area, don't write a check unless the guy is calling or willing to call himself pro-Hindu and pro-India. I realize that when you are representing his constituency, he has to represent all. That's okay. But he doesn't have to be anti-Hindu, and he doesn't have to be anti-India.
I applaud you for being so firm and assertive about it, and that's what is very important. That in New York area, when the New York State Assembly and the Senate were almost going to confirm swastika as a hate symbol, and HAF worked, and we also worked remarkably strongly, conveyed them our impression, and I said this to my fellow colleagues in Long Island, that it's a really sad thing that we have been supporting these people and we had no clue what they were doing against our interests.
Yeah, but Vibhuti, I have many Jewish friends.
Yes.
And I tell them that there are two kinds of swastikas. There is a German swastika and there is Hindu swastika, and they are different. Right. So I said, yes, you can bring a resolution against the German swastika or Nazi swastika. Hindu
hack and cruise, to put it mildly. Yes, yeah. Not to call that hack swastika at all. It's hack and cruise.
Right. The German Hakenkreuz and the Hindu and the swastika. There's only one swastika, right?
That's only one swastika. That's the Hindu swastika, yeah.
But to Bharat ji's, Dr. Barai's point, I think he makes a very good point. Sorry, did I cut you off, Dr. Barai? Yeah, no, I think he makes a very good point about holding our elected leaders accountable. You know, if we're writing checks, we've hopefully come beyond the age of the photo op, and we're not just content to have a photo. You will be, you know, as a politician yourself, Vibhutiji, you know, we're going to want a little more than just a smile, right? When somebody writes you a check. And you know, to that extent, there is the Hindu American Political Action Committee and several PACs that have now come together for greater coordination. And what we're seeing now, which is a very positive move, is most of the Hindu PACs are now discussing and coming together on a common agenda. That here's the Hindu American political you can call it an agenda or a checklist. But this is being given to those who are seeking assistance from the Hindu American community, and it talks about issues that are very important to the community, such as Hindu phobia, such as the integrity of Jammu and Kashmir as a part of India, to the issue of U.S.-India relationships and NDAA and authorizations and things like that. To many of the issues that we're discussing here about hate crimes. So all of that is part of an agenda that now goes to anyone who comes to Hindu community. And I would, Dr. Barai already does this. He passes on those names to Dr. Megani and to the Hindu American PAC. Together we vet the candidates, and then if it makes sense, then support is proffered. It's not just a guarantee that, oh, you're brown, or oh, you're Hindu, so here's a check. There's more to it than that, and I think that's just the maturation of our community. It's a maturation of our political donors class. So I think we're seeing that, and we're seeing results of that. And this is bipartisan. I mean, it's not about Democrats, it's not about Republicans, and you can see that the Ilhan Omar resolution, it got maybe 10 or 12 co-sponsors out of 435 members of Congress, right? So or 335 House members. You have maybe less than a dozen co-sponsors, and almost certainly, or you can just say certainly, it's not going to even pass the House Foreign Affairs Committee. We've heard from enough members to know that it's not going anywhere. So these types of things tell us that the community matters, the community is being heard, that people can do all types of different shenanigans. I remember in the 1980s, Gurmeet Singh Aulak every week had an anti-India resolution as the Khalistan representative on the Hill at the time, and they would get the guy from Indiana. I'm blanking on his name, but Dr. Barai will remember. Not Pressler, but
No. Pressler was the amendment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember his name.
Yeah. Maybe good riddance. We forgot. But this was a time when he would meet with Gurmeet Singh Aulak and drop a resolution, an anti-India resolution, and sometimes they got a fair number of co-sponsors. That doesn't happen today. Nobody of any substance or merit would sign on to such a thing. So, and even Ro Khanna was, in support of the NDAA. Of course, then he didn't vote for it because it was part of a different resolution, but that's a whole different story. But we know that in general, say what you will, Pramila Jayapal has not come up with an anti-India resolution ever since the Kashmir attempt, immediately after the abrogation of 370, which is a very popular move among Indian Americans. So she's sort of completely left that scene, hasn't said a anti-India statement in over 2 years. So I think our community matters, and the political activism and political engagement is paying results.
See, I have to share the story about this guy, Dan Burton.
Dan Burton.
Dan Burton, yes.
So I won't name the candidate, but he was standing for governor of Indiana. And I had a fundraiser in my basement. So then I approached him, and he was a Republican. So I approached him. I said, can you help us with Dan Burton, congressman? He's so anti-India. And he was gracious. He arranged a meeting, and we had a meeting in suburb of Indianapolis with Congressman Dan Burton. And I was there personally with 4 other Indian Americans. And we openly talked to him that, why are you doing this, blah, 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 and what can we do so that you are either neutral or more pro-India? And you know what he asked? $100,000. If you get me, he says, doctor, I have to win the election and I need the money. If you can raise $100,000 from Indian community, you got it. But
yeah,
I believe at that time, Speaker Foley was the House Speaker. Mm-hmm. And he had come for a fundraiser in Munster, Indiana, my hometown. And we talked to him about Dan Burton. Of course, he was a Democrat. And he said that, look, doctor, you are better off having Dan Burton on the other side because he's not liked by most people. He's considered an extremist person. So if Dan Burton sponsors any resolution, you are almost guaranteed it's not going to go anywhere. It's same thing with Ilhan Omar. We talked to our congressmen, many of them, they said, look, if Ilhan Omar sponsors a resolution, you know that it's not going to go anywhere because most of the Jewish members are not going to support it. Many of the moderate Democrats are not going to support it. And you can see here what happened with the Islamophobia resolution. It's not going anywhere in Senate. And in fact, we talked to Raja Krishnamurti, we talked to Rokhanda, I talked to Frank Marwan, and they said, yeah, we got a lot of representation. If we had to do it over again, I don't know that we will vote for it. But they all realized that it is not going anywhere. And we said, Raja, why don't you come up with a resolution about any kind of religious discrimination, not just Islam, but Hindus, Sikhs, Christian, Catholics, whatever you want to call it. So I think Ilhan Omar, if she takes one side, I think you can be guaranteed that most people are going to be on the other side.
I'm 100% sure that most of the viewers today would be very relieved to hear both of you affirm so proudly and so categorically that things are not going to hurt the Hindu community, regardless of the chest thumping or the breast beating by anyone. This is very, very comforting on this Sunday afternoon in New York on the Eastern Time. I want to come to another very interesting topic.
Pardon me for interruption. Can I quote somebody? He was the editor of Lok Satta, which was a newspaper in Vadodara, and I was discussing with him.
Okay.
And at that time, it was Indira Gandhi's emergency. He says, sit down, doctor. This country survived 600 years of Muslim rule. It survived 200 years of English rule, and it will survive Indira Gandhi also. So let's have a cup of tea.
You are right. I'll tell you a very interesting story about that, because it's actually just the reality that you quoted. Let's address that issue. There is a very famous author, writer, commentator, M.J. Akbar. I think everybody knows his name. A few years ago, he wrote an article. He wrote an article saying that Bhutto's 1,000-year war with India has still 950 odd years to go. I replied to him. I told him, I have met him a couple of times. So I told him, MJ, you are totally off the line in this comment, because Islam has won its first 1,000-year war with India, with dividing India into three clearly Islamic republics. Our Mahabharat area of Kandahar is gone. We have lost Pakistan and Islamic Republic of Bangladesh. So the idea is that Sanatan will survive, we Hindus will survive. But the question is where? Sindhis today don't have a homeland of their own. Kashmiris are foreigners in their own country. Look at the way they are being hounded out. So the question is, are we going to be hounded out in our own home? Is India a ripe country? Because we are not going to die. 1.3 billion Indians are not going to die, of as many Hindus are not going to die, but are we going to be balkanized? So there is a very critical term called democratic aspirations, which the Western world falls very rapidly to it. And that's the fear, that whose democratic aspiration is important today? 80% of Hindus or a belligerent minority that insists on having their own say? That's the important part. So I agree with you that we have survived it all, but in what form? Today, Kashmiri Pandits don't have their homeland, and they are even afraid to go back. So here is what I wanted to suggest, that all of us today talk about education and creating awareness. I am demanding, and I have tweeted it a couple of times, that unless and until, in Kashmir particularly, after 370, unless and until we demand, and I insist on the word demand, from Abdullahs and the Mufti Muhammads and Kashmir PDP and whatever party they are, that you have to categorically apologize for the dreaded, unfortunate three words, leave, convert, or die. You apologize for that. Say that this will never happen again. If you do not do that, then we are going again to be slaughtered again. That's the point which is very important. So I agree, we have survived. But how? If we were so accepted, this would not be happening. I will come back to this point that I was going to ask you. One of my friends from upstate New York, he always says that we Indians are very wealthy, we have done well for ourselves. But what do we do for the American community? There have been individual streaks of massive contributions running into 20s and 30s and $40 million to various foundations and created in universities for individual glory and individual name. We have done nothing for the community as such. And he always says that we do nothing for the American community. We raise funds for doing things in India. We do nothing for American communities here. To which another doctor friend of mine says, Vibhuti, don't forget, we contribute 6% of the taxes in America. How do we make that known? Again, back to education and awareness. 6% of American taxpayers' contribution we make, you and I make. You guys are doctors, were the first frontline people who made Indian professionals famous, respected, liked. Who doesn't like an Indian doctor? Then came the IT guys, who are hundreds of them are CEOs in companies. And every Indian professional has done well. But have we done much for the local community to do something to get recognition that we do this? Thoughts, both of you. This question is addressed to both of you, so don't have to repeat that. Either one of you can take the lead in answering that.
I'll take that first because this is something that Suhag and I were discussing quite a bit. We were recently in Kenya, in Nairobi, and met with several leaders of the Hindu institutions there, from whether it was BAPS or the Kachi Jain Oswal, Visa Oswal community, to the Jalaram temple community, very, very large congregations, many Gujarati, Punjabi, Hindu, Indian organizations. And when we went to the Jalaram temple, one thing that was, and the Sai temple, what was striking is that they had a hospital, a dental clinic, and a open kitchen for the community, that they served several thousand meals to Kenyan school children every single day, free, coming from their kitchens. And Suhag tweeted out pictures of the massive kitchen at the Jalaram temple in Nairobi. And we saw this in the Langata Langata Swaminarayan temple. It's a non-BAPS temple, and the BAPS temple, where they're doing outreaches all over Africa, where they're doing the BAPS charities. What we need to see more of is that, and we're seeing it. Seva International is doing amazing work. All of the charities that I just mentioned are doing work in the United States. Perhaps we're not highlighting it enough, but we can do more. We need to build more schools. Right next to the Oswal, Visa Oswal temple, there's a hospital, and there's an entire very high demand school, a primary school and a secondary school. So they've built all of these secondary structures and institutions beyond the temple. And we need to do more of that to be more visible. We need to make those donations rather than just giving it. And I'm at a university, and if you'd like to endow a chair, I welcome you to our department. But otherwise, give to your community in other ways, and you can, make that difference. And we need to be doing that in a more tangible and more visible way. So I think we're doing that. We're growing in that regard, but we're one generation away from really being established in that regard. So yes, you're absolutely right that we need to be, this is now home. My father came here in 1962. We made an attempt to go back to India in 1976, came back in 79. And after that, I think he knows that I wasn't going back to live full-time in India. My sons certainly are not going to be living. And I think once you've made that realization that this is now the land where our community is going to be, where our lineage is now, going to be grounded, we have to accept this as our bhumi and our karma bhumi. Not just karma bhumi, punya bhumi is India, but this is also now your punya bhumi, as much as India is. And we need to invest in that. So I think that's certainly a requirement in what you said. And again, I remain optimistic that we'll get there. We haven't gotten there, but we have to begin that journey.
Thank you. Bharatji, you?
I think Aseem summed it up very well. Your point is well taken. We have done a lot for our mandirs and other Indian institutions. We have done a lot for many charities in India, but we need to have better image with our local population, that we are part of the population and we share both the successes and the grief of the community. So we need to be more active in providing services and also participating in some of the civic functions like 4th of July parade. We should be there as a part of Indian Americans, not just doing a 15th August parade. We should do 4th July parade also. And at Thanksgiving, some of the institutions are already going out into the community, but doing it in disadvantaged communities like blacks as well as Hispanic Americans, I think that would give us a good feeling working with the disadvantaged people.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this. And now that we are in the last 4 minutes of our stretch here, wanted to ask you both, because both of you are very deeply involved and we are talking about this. The one thing which I wanted to say, thank the audience for being on the show today, because it's a Sunday afternoon and late night in India. So I've not been able to request people to ask their questions, but we have a question from Oneness and I will come to that. But prior to that, one last question of the day, both of you, is, Indian American Muslim Council, CARE, they are so determined to besmirch us and destroy our image. And they are very focused on that. And they are not mincing words on it. CARE is one organization that is banned even by United Arab Emirates, UAE, as a terrorist organization. Why in America, institutions like this, why does the American political system talks about terrorism, war against terrorism, but we have accepted terror as a negotiating tool? What is wrong with us in America? What is wrong with the American government that institutions like this take advantage of the very democratic rights they don't accept?
Well, I think I'll take a crack at it because I worked on it quite a bit during the resolution against India in the Chicago Council. And at that time, CARE was the one that really led the charge, and one of their internal email came in our hands. So that was the smoking gun we got in our hands, and we used it with some of the aldermen. You're right. I might just slightly correct you. It's not only banned, it is declared as a terrorist organization.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Thank you.
2014, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And CARE, the head of CARE in Dallas, Texas, was convicted for money laundering. They were raising the money in name of Holy Land Foundation, which was an affiliate of CARE. And the judge convicted them because they were passing on that money of Holy Land Foundation to Hamas. And he was convicted and he's in jail. He was sentenced to 10 years jail. We used this successfully against CARE in trying to lobby with the aldermen in Chicago. CARE has money which is coming from nefarious sources. Last Sunday, when I was at a fundraiser for Raja Krishnamurti, he said that, I go everywhere. I've attended fundraiser or event for CARE. I say, you attended a terrorist organization's event? He says, no. And I just pulled up on my iPhone from Wikipedia that CARE was declared as a terrorist organization. And he was shocked. He says, I don't believe it. I said, Raja, here it is. Why don't you read it? He read it. He says, I was not aware of it. So if an Indian congressman is not aware of CARE being a terrorist organization by an Islamic country, what has been surprising, Vibhuti, we attack CARE very directly. In fact, we took out advertisement in Chicago Sun-Times 2 days before the resolution came in Chicago City Council, and openly quoted that it was an affiliate of Muslim Brotherhood. Their head has been sentenced in Dallas, and is in jail, and UAE has declared them as terrorist organization, we expected some sort of backlash from CARE. Believe it or not, there was none, in spite of us openly taking out a newspaper advertisement. So I think they are a little bit on the defensive side. The other interesting thing that we learned, CARE has a money, they have a full-time office, that's an advantage. And in all the cities where the resolution passed successfully against India, it was CARE, whether it was Seattle or San Francisco. But guess what? When we mounted our own campaign of all volunteers with our own money. And then we did fundraiser after the city of Chicago vote and talking to them. Now we had adopted our own tactics of trying to lobby for India. And I don't want to share it openly on TV, but we have shared it with our other organizations. We were hearing that the CARE was doing a lot of phone calling and a lot of emailing, and we believed it. But when the alderman told us, we were kind of pleasantly shocked. He says, you guys make our office staff go to hell. I said, what? He says, we received more than 13,500 emails. He said, we didn't have to even time. It was so boring and so exhausting. He says, we didn't read it, but only we are classified as anti-resolution or pro-resolution. I said, yeah, but, Alderman, we had to do it because CARE was, so what they used to do, Vibhuti, they had only 4 or 5 guys. One day we'll make calls in name of Ahmad to all the congressmen, aldermen's office. Another day in name of Shaheen. Third day in name of Muhammad. Fourth day in name of somebody else. So it looked like as if there were hundreds of people who were making phone calls to the alderman's office in support of the resolution. And they received about 450 emails generated by CARE. Fortunately, believe it or not, most of the mainstream Muslims are not with CARE. They have staged some anti-India demonstrations in front of consulate in Chicago. And we have the videos. Most of the time it is 15, 20 people. Same way when we had World Hindu Congress in Chicago, we had about 15 or 20 people who demonstrated, and we sent one of the Sardar that we knew was pro-India. He even go and talk to them and take their pictures. These are same 15, 17 guys, some Khalistanis and some Indian American Muslim Council, who go, whether it is in San Francisco or whether it is in Chicago or Seattle or New York, they travel and make the demonstration. Even when it came to anti-CAA, there were demonstrations, there were barely 30, 35 people on Michigan Avenue, while we had 600 people on the other side. So I think CARE is getting the money and they are doing this business, but I don't think they have as much support. And same is Indian American Muslim Council. There are some determined group of people, no question.
I will switch to now coming to the last element of this entire thing is that, there is a question and I will ask, probably it will lead to a little bit more discussion. We are out of time. The question is from Oneness. Thank you, Oneness. Sirs, I have a question about Abrahamics. Are the Jews and Hindus in the US backing each other? Is there a clear, visible bond? If not, why not? Aseem, you go ahead, please.
So what I would say is, and I think Dr. Barai also brought this up, which is that when we speak here, we should be very careful about generalizations, right? So most Muslims are not with CARE. Most Muslims, Indian Muslims, are not with IAMC. Almost all Sikhs are not Khalistani. The tiny population of the Sikhs are pro-Khalistan. Some of the things that we're dealing with are the radical minorities that are after us. So let's find our allyship in all of these people, because we have allies in all of these groups. We have allies that are Indian Muslims. We have allies, many allies in Muslim, Sikhs, Christian groups, all of them. Do we have allyship with the Jewish community? Of course we do. Of course we do. We're very fortunate to have partnerships with all of the major Jewish organizations. We just did an event with ADL, speaking about hate. with Stand With Us, another major Jewish organization. So we are American Jewish Committee, Simon Wiesenthal Center. We're very proud of our relationship and our friendship and our being there for each other. Through what and learning from the experiences that they've had fighting anti-Semitism. We're taking many of those lessons and implementing them, of course, because ours is a new experience. Ours is a new community. But hate is the same when it comes to your community, when it comes to find you. So yes, we're very fortunate to be working with all of these different faith organizations and in many multi-faith coalitions.
Thank you very much. The time is up, but there's one vital thing to talk about. And that vital thing is, as one Mr. Prem Swaminathanji has asked this question, will all the Indian American associations synergize to fight with a single face? Today, we are split in the USA. Now, my question is, this is a concern expressed. My thing is that, we have to create more bodies. We have seen the rise of Kohana. We have seen the rise of Hindu Pact. VHPA is there. There are so many other organizations. There is a need. What I have proposed is a 3CM formula. And I hope you will agree with that each group of people must do what they are best at and what they feel is the right approach to do that. And we Indians must not run down or cut short anybody's efforts. So I say 3CM stands for coordinate, cooperate, collaborate, and then mobilize. To use the cycle, wherever you have the confluence, do it together. If you don't have the confluence, if you don't agree, then we need to go ahead and do what we want in the desired direction. So with these words, I wanted to say, thank you very much for joining, Aseemji and Bharatji. It is wonderful to have you both. Very enlightening conversation. I'm 100% sure that majority of the viewers would agree with. We will be delighted to know what you had to share. I always end by saying, Satyamev Jayate, truth shall win. So thank you very much for joining this Sunday afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this dialogue and share our views. Thank you.
Thank you. You are welcome, sir. You are welcome. Thank you, Dr. Shukla, and see you again.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Namaste.